Imagine a desert stretching endlessly, not just with sand and sun, but with unspoken stories and unseen heroes. Sometimes the most profound acts of courage aren't found on a battlefield, but in the quiet determination of someone who refuses to leave anyone behind. What if a faded patch on a shoulder could tell a tale of sacrifice so powerful it could change the hearts of those ordered to hunt her? Join us as we journey into a gripping narrative where the rules of engagement are rewritten by the enduring spirit of a true legend. The desert stretched out endlessly beneath a blazing sun, its vast emptiness interrupted only by a battered pickup truck kicking up dust as it crawled over the dunes. High above, two A-10 Warthogs descended with terrifying precision, their shadows swallowing the small vehicle below. The orders were straightforward: intercept the target at all costs. But as the lead pilot drew closer, something caught his eye: a patch on the driver's shoulder. Faded and frayed, yet unmistakable. The radio, once alive with confident chatter, fell into a tense silence. The hunt was over before it had truly begun. What had they seen? Sergeant Alex Monroe, 36, once a proud member of the elite Desert Ghost Unit, specialized in desert warfare and daring rescue missions behind enemy lines. Combat injuries had forced her out of the military, but she refused to let go of the skills and purpose that had defined her. Now, as a civilian, she worked alongside humanitarian groups along the Middle Eastern border, guiding aid through hostile terrain where few dared to tread. Her uniform had been replaced with practical gear, but the faded desert ghost patch on her shoulder remained, an emblem only the hardened recognized, a mark of battle survived. Today she was driving an emergency medical transport, pushing across the border with a critically ill child in the back seat. The patch, battered by wind and sun, bore the skull and desert symbols that only those who knew could identify. Alex's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, not to check for pursuers, but to watch the boy. His fever burned high, his breath shallow and rapid. Supplies were running low: medicine, water, hope. Nightfall loomed, and if they didn't cross in time, the boy wouldn't last the night. Suddenly, her gaze sharpened. It wasn't the sun's glare that made her squint, but the unmistakable shimmer of heat-distorted air far ahead, a sign of jet engines roaring in pursuit. Her instincts surged, honed by years of combat and survival. Before the planes came into view, she knew the source of the thunderous roar. A-10 Thunderbolts. Warthogs, designed to hunt and destroy exactly what she was driving. Regional Command had scrambled the fighters to intercept what they believed was an unauthorized crossing. To them, she was a smuggler, an insurgent trying to evade detection. The radio crackled, cold and unyielding. Unidentified vehicle, you are in restricted airspace. Stop immediately and prepare for inspection. Alex's hands steadied the wheel with practiced calm, her fingers pressing the radio button. This is medical emergency transport. I have a critical patient requiring immediate evacuation. The response was sharp, dismissive. Negative, unidentified vehicle. No medical clearance on file for this sector. Stop your vehicle now. Behind her, the boy's breathing grew more strained, ragged. His mother, a refugee who spoke no English, stared at Alex with desperation too raw to need words. Time was slipping away, and bureaucracy was no barrier to death. With her mind made up, Alex pressed harder on the accelerator. Every second wasted could cost the boy his life. She keyed her radio again. I'm continuing to the border. This child needs immediate medical attention. The answer was swift and unforgiving. Vehicle, you have violated direct orders. Military aircraft inbound to enforce compliance. Stop now or face consequences. Through the dusty windshield, Alex spotted the jets, two dark silhouettes expanding rapidly against the endless blue sky. The A-10s closed in fast, their monstrous GAU-8 cannons designed to obliterate armored targets, let alone a fragile pickup truck. But Alex had faced worse during her days with the Desert Ghost Unit. The memory of every mission, every escape, every rescue was alive in her veins. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. The child's life was in her hands. The desert's deadly silence was about to be shattered. She was a ghost in the vast desert, having trekked through hostile territory for days, carrying wounded comrades over scorching sand, surviving when everyone else said it was impossible. Back then, her fight had been against clear enemies. Now she found herself hunted by her own military pilots, soldiers who didn't recognize who she was or understand the sacrifices she had made under the very same flag they pledged to serve. As the A-10 Warthogs closed in, their massive forms casting long shadows over the desert floor, Alex kept her hands steady on the steering wheel, eyes locked on the horizon. Behind her, the fragile life of an innocent child balanced precariously on the edge. The radio crackled with arrogant chatter from the enemy above, though these were her own people. "Look at her go," the lead pilot sneered. "Little truck trying to play soldier out here. This should be quick." His wingman laughed. "Bet we wrap this up in one pass, probably some smuggler who thinks she can outrun us." Alex cut the radio feed. She knew that tone, the dismissive voice of those who'd never felt the burn of the desert sun on their skin, never had to ration their last drops of water for wounded comrades. Her grip tightened on the wheel as she stared forward, refusing to be broken. In her rearview mirror, the boy's condition worsened, his small frame shaking with fever. Memories surged up unbidden, of desert ghost missions where she'd been dismissed as mere support until the shooting started. Briefings where officers doubted a woman's ability to handle combat pressure. Countless battles where she proved herself only to start fresh with every new mission. "Control, this is Warthog lead," a voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "Target maintaining course. Single occupant. Probably local insurgent testing response time." "Copy, Warthog lead. You're authorized to use intimidation tactics. Show them what happens when they test our airspace." The first A-10 dropped to a dangerously low altitude, engines roaring like thunder as it swept directly over Alex's truck. The deafening noise was meant to terrify, to force immediate surrender. But Alex had faced worse. During Operation Desert Mirage, she'd walked 3 days through enemy territory while helicopters hunted her unit. She'd learned to remain calm when death circled above. The second pass came closer, the turbulence rocking her vehicle as the pilot flaunted total control. "Control, target is not responding to intimidation," the wingman reported. "Should we escalate to warning shots?" "Negative, Warthog 2. Continue harassment pattern. If they don't stop in 5 minutes, we'll discuss live fire options." Alex checked her GPS. The border was still 20 minutes away. 20 minutes the child might not have, and 20 minutes these pilots refused to give. She pressed harder on the accelerator, knowing speed was her only shield against aircraft capable of destroying her with a single cannon burst. The lead A-10 banked sharply and came around for another intimidation run, flying parallel to her truck barely 50 feet above the ground. As the massive jet roared alongside, the pilot squinted through his targeting display. He expected to see a frightened smuggler or a confused civilian. Instead, he saw a woman whose posture radiated calm confidence, hands steady despite the fighter jet inches away. Then his blood ran cold. On her shoulder was a patch, faded, weathered by years of desert sun and wind, but unmistakable. The skull and crossbones emblem of a seasoned warrior, a symbol of battles fought and survived. The distinctive desert camouflage pattern of the Desert Ghost unit was instantly recognizable to anyone versed in military history. Beneath his helmet, the pilot's face drained of color. Memories of whispered stories shared by his commanding officer flooded back. Tales exchanged in quiet, reverent tones among pilots who truly understood courage and sacrifice. Those stories spoke of a solitary ghost, a figure who had led a daring rescue mission through relentless sandstorms for 3 grueling days, saving a trapped squad from certain death. His hands trembled on the controls as the shocking realization dawned. The woman they had been pursuing was none other than one of the most highly decorated desert fighters in recent military history. "Control," he stammered into his radio, his voice stripped of its former arrogance. "Abort mission. I repeat, abort all aggressive maneuvers. Warthog lead." A confused voice replied, "Explain your status, Warthog lead." "That's Jesus Christ. That's the Desert Ghost," he whispered, barely audible. "Control, the target is confirmed. Desert Ghost unit, we are standing down immediately." The admission lingered in the desert air like a shockwave. Every military personnel monitoring the frequency recognized the call sign. Every pilot who had flown desert operations had heard the whispered legends of the ghosts. Suddenly, the hunters realized they had been chasing one of their own heroes. The radio silence that followed was louder than any jet engine. A silence filled with deep respect for a legend who had stepped back out from the shadows into the harsh desert light and military consciousness once more. In that charged moment, the question echoed silently. Is true reputation forged by shining rank insignia, or by the whispered stories passed down in reverent silence? Type legacy. If you believe some legends don't need formal recognition because they have already become history, that quiet stretched across the desert like a held breath. What had begun as a routine intercept mission transformed into something entirely different, something that would be remembered and retold in military circles for years to come. On the ground, control monitoring all communications immediately began accessing classified databases, files that demanded the highest security clearances. The duty officer's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up dossiers that most in the military were never allowed to see. Warthog lead, Warthog 2, maintain current position, but do not engage, came the urgent command from headquarters. We are verifying target identification. Colonel James Harrison, the base commander, was notified without delay. He had been a young captain when the Desert Ghost executed Operation Sandstorm in 2015, the mission that had saved an entire Special Forces company trapped behind enemy lines. He knew the stories were more than myth. Get me everything we have on that vehicle, Harrison ordered his intelligence officer, and patch me through to those pilots immediately. Within minutes, Sergeant Alex Monroe's service record appeared on classified screens throughout the command center. Despite heavy redactions due to the extreme sensitivity of her missions, the remaining details revealed a portrait of extraordinary heroism unmatched by most soldiers. Pilots, this is Colonel Harrison, a new authoritative voice crackled over the radio, making both A-10 pilots sit straighter in their cockpits. You are in the presence of Sergeant Alex Monroe, former Desert Ghost. She has full authorization to proceed on any heading necessary for her humanitarian mission. The lead pilot, still shaken by the recognition of her patch, carefully maneuvered his aircraft to fly alongside Alex's pickup truck at a respectful distance. Through the dusty windshield, he could finally see her clearly. She was smaller than the legends had made her out to be, entirely focused on her driving and the precious cargo in her back seat. There was no anger in her posture, no sense of triumph at being recognized, only quiet determination and unwavering purpose. Doing what she had always done, completing the mission no matter the obstacles, Sergeant Alex Monroe pressed on. Then a voice came over the radio, no longer arrogant, but sincere and humbled. Ma'am, the lead pilot spoke, his tone completely transformed. This is Captain Mike Rodriguez, Warthog lead. I want to apologize for our earlier behavior. We didn't know. Alex briefly keyed her microphone before responding calmly. No apology necessary. Captain, you were doing your job. The captain continued, his voice thick with emotion. Ma'am, my father served with the 75th Rangers. He was at Firebase Delta when Desert Ghost pulled them out. He always said he owed his life to a ghost who walked through hell to bring them home. A heavy silence followed, laden with meaning. Alex remembered that mission all too well. She recalled the young ranger who had been critically wounded while holding the perimeter. She relived the grueling 3-day trek through enemy territory, carrying soldiers who couldn't walk, rationing water barely enough for one person among 8. Your father was a good soldier, Alex said quietly. He held that line when it mattered most. Behind his helmet visor, Rodriguez felt tears welling up. The woman he had once been ordered to intimidate was the reason his father had survived to see him grow up, the reason he even existed. Ma'am, Rodriguez continued, voice thick with feeling, Desert Ghost never walks alone. We're honored to provide escort. The 2 A-10 Warthogs shifted positions, flanking Alex's pickup truck. What had started as a hostile pursuit transformed into a protective honor guard, a military escort for a humanitarian mission crossing forbidden territory. Something unprecedented. Word of the situation spread quickly through military channels. Officers monitoring the routine intercepts suddenly briefed their superiors on the identity of the driver they had been tracking. Sir, an intelligence officer reported, the target we've been tracking is the one who led the Kandahar extraction, the rescue at Observation Post Charlie, and Operation Silent Thunder. Each mission name carried immense weight, legendary operations that defined the ethos of leaving no one behind, no matter the cost or odds. Colonel James Harrison, the base commander himself, took direct communication with Alex. Sergeant Monroe, this is Colonel Harrison. I want to personally ensure you have clear passage to your destination. What do you need from us? Just clear airspace, Colonel, Alex replied. I have a patient who needs immediate medical attention across the border. Consider it done, Harrison responded. We're coordinating with Border Control to expedite your crossing. The child is going to make it, Sergeant. As the unusual convoy moved steadily across the desert, Alex kept her full focus on the patient in her care. The boy's breathing had stabilized somewhat but remained fragile, demanding urgent medical intervention. Overhead, the A-10s maintained their vigilant formation. Inside their cockpits, both pilots realized they were part of something far greater than a routine mission. They were continuing a legacy, escorting one of the most decorated desert fighters in modern military history as she carried out yet another rescue operation. Warthog to base, Rodriguez's wingman transmitted. Request permission to coordinate with medical teams at the border crossing. We want to ensure a smooth handoff for the patient. Permission granted, came the swift reply. Warthog 2, full support authorized. Approaching the border, Alex spotted the medical team already assembled at the crossing, alerted in advance by the A-10's coordination efforts. Relief washed over her. Her patient would receive the care he needed. Sergeant Monroe, Rodriguez transmitted as they neared the border. It's been the highest honor of my military career to fly with you today. The honor was mine, Captain Alex replied. Thank you for the escort. Her pickup truck rolled safely into the medical zone as the A-10s veered back toward their base. Alex allowed herself a quiet, satisfied smile. The worn patch on her shoulder had just reminded an entire military command structure that some honors go beyond paperwork, that some legends never truly retire, and that some ghosts never fully fade away. The boy was hurried into the waiting medical team's care, his mother's tears streaming down her face in relief as doctors immediately began treatment. Another life was saved, another mission carried out successfully. Behind them, the two A-10 Warthogs climbed into the bright desert sky, their pilots forever altered by the encounter. They had come to understand that real heroism often traveled in dusty pickup trucks, carried by those who sought no recognition but acted with extraordinary courage. That morning, the desert bore witness to something rare, the intersection of legend and reality, the moment when stories transformed into truth and the past reached out to shield the present. Alex Monroe drove away from the border crossing, her mission complete. Her identity, once again, receded into anonymity. But for those who had seen what unfolded in the desert that day, the memory would remain indelible. 3 days later, the tale of the desert ghost escorted by the A-10s spread through military networks like wildfire, not as idle gossip, but as a solemn reminder of what true service looks like. Captain Rodriguez requested permission to visit the humanitarian organization where Alex worked. When he arrived at the dusty compound, he found her under the hood of her pickup, tuning it up and preparing for the next mission. Sergeant Monroe, he said, standing at attention despite wearing civilian clothes. Just Alex now, she replied, glancing up from checking the radiator. And you must be Captain Rodriguez. He eased into a small smile. Yes, ma'am, I wanted to thank you personally for what you did for my father. Your father thanked me years ago. That was enough, Alex said quietly. Rodriguez pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, a middle-aged man sitting in a wheelchair, beaming as he held a young child. He's retired now, but he still talks about that day. Says he never expected to see his family again, until he heard footsteps in the sand. Alex nodded, the memory vivid. Firebase Delta had been surrounded for 4 days when Desert Ghost got the extraction order. We had a rule in Desert Ghost, she said. The desert doesn't abandon its own. Rodriguez smiled softly. He uses that phrase now. He's teaching survival courses for young rangers. News of the A-10 encounter had spread through the ranks. Young pilots began seeking out stories of desert ghosts, learning about operations long classified. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, a young helicopter pilot, drove 6 hours to meet Alex after hearing the story. Ma'am, I wanted to ask about making decisions under pressure, Chen said. How do you balance following orders with doing what's right? Alex paused, wiping her hands on a rag. You don't balance them, you find a way to do both. Sometimes that means accepting the consequences for standing up for what you know is right. Chen's brow furrowed. But what if those consequences could end your career? Alex looked her straight in the eyes. Then you remember why you put on the uniform in the first place. It wasn't to follow orders blindly. It was to serve something bigger than yourself. Unexpectedly, the humanitarian organization received a generous donation from an anonymous military fund, enough to purchase 2 new vehicles and secure medical supplies for 6 months. Colonel Harrison also reached out, offering Alex a consulting position to train military personnel in desert survival and humanitarian operations. We need someone who understands that rules exist to serve people, Harrison explained during their phone conversation. Alex considered the offer carefully. I appreciate the recognition, Colonel, but my work is here. These people fall through the cracks of every system. I understand, but would you consider running training sessions for our younger personnel? That I can do. The A-10 pilots, who had escorted her, began coordinating with humanitarian groups, sharing vital intelligence on safe routes and possible dangers. News spread quickly. There was someone in the desert who could reach places others couldn't. Alex's compound transformed into an informal training ground where military personnel came to grasp the true meaning of service. She never preached or gave formal lectures. Instead, she shared her stories, answered every question honestly, and showed through everyday actions that real heroism wasn't about glory or medals. The faded desert ghost patch still clung to her shoulder, a silent emblem understood by all who saw it, not just as a mark of a disbanded unit, but as a living philosophy that refused to be forgotten. The desert protected its own, and legends born there never truly vanished. Those young soldiers quickly learned that some patches weren't mere fabric and thread. They were woven from sand, soaked in blood, and stitched together with an unbreakable vow. No one ever gets left behind. 6 months later, the call came that would bring everything full circle. This is Colonel Harrison. We've got a situation in Sector 7, military convoy trapped in a sandstorm. Multiple casualties. Standard rescue teams can't get through because of the conditions. Alex checked her gear, steady and ready. Send me the coordinates. Ma'am, Harrison continued, voice edged with urgency, we're requesting civilian assistance. No one else can navigate that storm. As Alex prepared her pickup truck for the rescue, familiar voices crackled over the radio. Desert Ghost, this is Warthog Lead. We're honored to provide air support. Looking up, she saw them. Rodriguez, his wingman, and not just them, but a whole squadron of A-10s roaring through the clearing skies. Word had spread throughout the pilot community. Everyone wanted to join this mission. Ma'am? Rodriguez's voice came strong and clear. Desert Ghost never walks alone. Today we're all walking with you. The formation crossing the desert that morning was unlike anything anyone had seen before. A lone civilian pickup truck, leading a fleet of military aircraft through a sandstorm so fierce it had grounded every other rescue attempt. Alex moved on instinct, reading the subtle shifts in the wind and sand patterns invisible to others. The A-10s followed her lead without question, placing full trust in her unmatched knowledge of the desert. The rescue was a success. 12 soldiers were pulled from a fate their commanders had declared impossible to survive. Alex drove through terrain that GPS could never map, relying on skills honed in covert operations that never officially existed. As they returned through skies clearing to calm, she reflected on the journey. The faded patch on her shoulder no longer symbolized a forgotten unit. It had transformed into a bridge connecting generations of service members who knew some values mattered more than regulations or hierarchy. The young pilots who had once dismissed civilian expertise now sought her out, eager to learn from someone whose wisdom was forged through surviving the impossible. In a world fixated on procedures and protocols, many had forgotten that courage, adaptability, and an unwavering commitment to never leave anyone behind were qualities that no classroom could teach. These values transcended branches of the military and blurred the lines between civilian and soldier. Alex didn't need medals or ceremonies to validate her service. What mattered was knowing that when lives were on the line, people would follow her into the desert's deadliest reaches. When her truck pulled back into base that evening, the faded patch was still visible on her shoulder. She was surrounded by pilots who had learned the most vital lesson of all. Some legends aren't crafted from cloth and thread. They're woven from the grit of sand and sacrifice, from the blood of those who came before, and they never, ever back down. The desert had reclaimed one of its own, and the legend of the Desert Ghost lived on, not in official records, but in the hearts of those who understood that true service never retires.